incredible, so incredible that it's going to make my job really easy. They're used to giving the messages, they're used to being the storytellers, they're used to being the voice, they're used to being in front, right? But in all seriousness, these women are incredible industry insiders who have the experience and what it takes not only to get the message across for brands, for organizations, for advocates, for human beings, but also they are just wonderful human beings. And I think that's really important in this industry because it is all about authenticity, it is all about truth-telling, and making sure, especially as this community becomes an industry and as outlaws become pioneers, that the truth be told, that the stories being told are based in reality, science, and brand authenticity. So I'm going to allow each of these women to introduce themselves because they know themselves best, and then we'll get started.
Hey, I'm Shawna MacGregor. I'm the founder and CEO of Maverick Public Relations, and I just want to pause for a minute on that word truth and transparency. It's so important in what we do, and that's what we bring to the table. So, yeah.
Very great. I'm Donohoe. I am a managing director at KCSA Strategic Communications, and I am also the producer and co-host of the Green Rush podcast.
Great podcast. Gotta subscribe.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Gia Moron. I'm founder and CEO of GVM Communications, and I just want to add a funny tidbit. When I started my company in 2012, it was April 20th, 2012. I had no idea that the significance in the industry that I would go into, but thanks for having me here today.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Salarizadeh. I am the former founder and CEO of Salar Media Group, which was a top cannabis and hemp PR firm that was acquired by KCSA Strategic Communications in 2018. I'm also the founder and president of the luxury brand House of Safa and the co-founder of Green Market Report.
All right, I told you these are powerful women who have a lot of experience in public relations, marketing, and getting the message out. So let's start at the beginning and really talk about why. Why do we need PR? Why do we need the message? And why can't brands do it themselves? Go.
Well, so first of all, it's actually very unique in the cannabis industry that are both operating in the cannabis industry. I don't have to tell any of you this. It's like operating with both arms tied behind your back, and in particular that marketing piece and not being able to do the things that the marketers traditionally would do. Social media targeting, even getting into some of the glossier magazines have been, like with paid ads, has been a challenge. So, being able to provide service and education to, to the press as a channel to your target audience has been one of the only channels that we can, use.
And I think, we come at it from a very B2B centric agency, so we do a lot of investor relations too. So we sort of found that, as this industry was legitimizing and, as these companies were going public, there was a real need for professional communications because, we understand Wall Street, we understand the cadence of communication, what they're used to, and we collectively are all able to give that knowledge and help these companies achieve fair valuation, which, talk to me about that later, I guess, and really get their story out there and get their news out there in a way that legitimizes and normalizes what these companies are doing.
As a federally illegal drug, in cannabis as a brand, a person, or a company of any kind, your only real route to exposure is public relations at this time. There are certain roundabouts where you can purchase some paid advertising. That started about 2 years ago, but it's really minimal in its effect. But right now in the cannabis industry, and I would argue the same probably for psychedelics, if you do not have a strong PR background or somebody with communications on your team, you will struggle if you do not have somebody assisting you in exposing your company to the world. It's incredibly important, but a bit of a challenge in our industry, but we have found ways around it, and there's really not too many more challenges. I think we've overcome everything. Just a few years.
And so it's interesting, so prior to coming into the cannabis industry, I worked on Wall Street for 15 years. And prior to that, I worked in corporate entertainment. So I think a lot of us also, why we do what we do, is we bring our expertise from other industries as this industry is continuing to evolve, right? Continuing to emerge. I said to someone earlier, I said, the fact that we're talking about what we're talking about today, when I think about 2015 and earlier, we weren't having these more mature conversations or even talking about businesses going public and being able to have investor relations and coordinating with CEOs on how we're going to deliver these quarterly messages. And so PR in cannabis is so essential to all of our businesses, even as a startup or a more established business. And the more let me tell you, crisis management is critical in this industry because we're always walking that fine line. So we do what we do because if we weren't here to help protect these brands and being able to help them deliver the messages, we probably would be in pickle most of the time.
I mean, you bring up a really interesting point of, being in the game since 2012. I got pulled into, I was mostly focused on renewable energy, sustainable technology, and when someone leaned over to me and like, 2014, what do you think about cannabis? I'm like, you want to smoke a joint or something? And, got pulled into it, and it's just been, and at that time in 2014, no brands, no brands wanted to.
Everybody was hidden.
They, I had to be like, you've put your blood, sweat, and tears and your life into this. You don't talk to the press, you're letting, the opposition get away with
Being able to
everything.
But at the same time, there was a very delicate balance on how we would bring some of these legacy operators out of the dark and into the light, because we did see some people do it incorrectly, and those people still deal with charges. And this was long after everything was was recreationally legal in Colorado, California, and Oregon. So it's still possible. So it was a slow process for us to find a few that had maybe a little less felonies at that time. This is in the very beginning, and they existed. And then we found them, and then slowly all their friends began to trust us because we would slowly introduce them to the press in a way that was not going to be harmful for anybody. Maybe it was just their brand, we left their name out, we left their details out, we left how long that they've been doing this for the last 30 years out. There was a way to do it. You didn't just bust up in there and bring everybody out of Humboldt and put them on CNN. In fact, when that happened on Sanjay Gupta's CNN, Sean is still in trouble with federal charges. So yeah, it was a quiet process, it was a slow process, we did it delicately, and now there's nothing else to fear. Everybody's in the light.
But is there still a unicorn out there? Like, what is the ultimate goal and get in PR for a brand that hasn't been gotten yet? Is it, I don't know, is it to have a
Fox News.
I'll second that. Is it Fox News?
No.
Or is it, is it rolling paper and Oprah? Like, what's the sort of,
The first female cannabis entrepreneur to hit $1 billion. That hasn't been done yet.
Right, but who's gonna gonna do the PR? Where's the PR? What's, great, we've got $1 billion woman out there. Where do you place her? Where do you place that information?
Everywhere.
And everybody will take it. There'll be no sort of, but why?
Because she's the first billionaire company.
So it's financial.
Well, you probably, yeah.
It's sort of financial.
Yeah.
So it's the money, not the brand.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a combination of all. I mean, in order for them to have gotten to $1 billion, they've had to have reached something and be successful in what they do. But that individual, for example, the $1 billion unicorn, she is, she's the first to that, right? And she's opening the pathway to the next that are coming through. So the Wall Street Journal is going to want to write about that. The New York Times is going to want to write about that. Heck, we can even get The Economist and FT to write about that.
Yeah.
It shows if she's made $1 billion in the US, what can she do globally? And what we do, we help to create that narrative, to tell that story so that it becomes a domino effect that more and more people want to report on this $1 billion unicorn.
But then the question is, how are they reporting on it? And in the female, in the gender scope of it, in the beginning, and I saw Jamie Lewis over there, who's gotten more than one shout out today, but in the beginning in 2014, it was a lot of women in the Colorado space doing this. And it's just shocking to see how few, but the thing that drives me the most nuts, representing many women who are so accomplished, is when a reporter is like, so how do you do it all? How do you manage your kids and your job? And I'm like, what reporter has ever asked a man that? It's just so insulting. So sorry, reporters out there. And also checking ages on women. I'd be on a Wall Street Journal call with a man. They never ask their age, and then it's just.
Or how do you talk about your job with your children?
Exactly.
No one asks, they don't ask. I do on my podcast. I ask everybody. But I also think there's this, and we're at this really interesting tipping point and inflection because, there's been tremendous growing pains, especially in the markets. I mean, anybody looking at their portfolio now is probably pretty sad. So, I really think that, I just really think that once we get to the point where it is normalized, it is legal, there's safe banking, there's all of these hurdles that all of these businesses, I don't think people realize, I definitely don't think the general public realizes all of the hurdles that you guys have to go through just to run your business. Between the taxes and 280E and all of that stuff, and no one really, this is an industry thing, this is not, the mainstream media doesn't really understand that. And we need to get to a place where we don't have stoner headlines and we don't have puns. This is a real legitimate business, making money for people, helping people, and it needs to be seen that way and reported as such.
And I also just want to point out one other thing. We're in the middle of, midterm elections, and you guys, you ladies and gentlemen, better believe that over the next few months, we're gonna see significant opposition forces with their stupid surveys and all of that. And we have to stand up against that. We need real science and real research, not this garbage coming out of wherever, So, that's important. And the only way we can fight that stuff is for every one of you who are license holders to stand up against it and fight for, your state to be doing the, funding for research, real research, and it's so important.
So you're starting to sound like an activist. What's the overlap here?
I think we're all activists.
Yeah, I was gonna say we all. You can't operate in this industry and not be an activist, even as a business owner. We're still federally illegal. We gotta fight to become legal. So it requires all of our energy, and I think we even do that through the work that we do as publicists, right? As PR firms. We're helping our clients, again, I love the point that you made about, we have to make sure that our relationship across the pen, right? That our journalist friends understand that they also hold a responsibility in telling the story that they're no longer stoner headlines, right? That the science is real and that our clients are doing real work, at least most that we want to represent. But yeah, we are all active. Everyone in here is an activist.
Well, I've been consuming cannabis since before I should admit, and I grew up in a Navy family. Mom and both sides are Navy, and you did not consume cannabis like you did. That was not allowed. And when this started to happen, and when I moved just out of happenstance to Colorado in 2012, and this was all happening, and the guy leaned over and, I was like, yes, I want to do this. And like, if I had been at an Edelman or if I had been at a Porter Novelli or something like that, I couldn't have said yes. But I was at an amazing PR firm, the Rosen Group. Lori Rosen's a mentor of mine, and she said yes. And, I was a grown-up, I paid my own bills, and I told my parents, and now my parents consume. So it's crazy. And so one consumer at a time, educating one consumer at a time, including my Navy parents.
And I think we all had to become activists within our friend group, within our families, like you were just saying, because the most phone calls I get from are from my aunts and like my uncles and like people who are like, I used to do this, I'm ashamed about it, and tell me everything. And I think that demographic is really interesting because they're one of the fastest growing demographics, of consumption out there. So I think to your point, we do it every day, off the clock, on the clock, we're constantly at it.
I just want to say, that's one thing you were asking, why do you do it or how do you do it? You have to have passion. PR is not a 9-to-5 job. I always get calls on Friday at 6 or 7 about a deadline because of this.
What about the weekend?
And all week, so you have to love it. Otherwise, it's.
Can I learn you have to love your clients, their projects?
You have to believe in them.
Too, but to your earlier question, there's nothing more rewarding when our friends and families actually read the articles that we get our clients in, and they'll call and say, hey, did you see this article? Did you see what they're saying? And I'm like, yeah, that's our client. We're representing them. And what did you think about that article? And it's so rewarding to see that response because they're learning through the work that we're doing. So that's part of the advocacy as well.
Educator. Part of the advocacy work is education. And I think in cannabis is unique in that experience that you are a publicist, you are an educator, you are an activist,
Psychiatrist,
therapist,
hairdresser,
exactly.
Stylist, yeah, all of that.
And all trying to do it within a gray, legal-ish framework. Talk to me a little bit about that legal-ish framework and how, as publicists, you embrace it, work around it, live with it. What does that sort of feel like?
I said it, I'm sorry.
Say it again in the microphone, Bix.
I said save our clients' asses always, because we do. We're walking a fine line. And they can misspeak, or a journalist can misinterpret their response. We have to make sure that we're cleaning that up. Can we check that quote?
Yeah.
Can we talk you through that answer a little bit more? Because that's not quite right, yeah.
Back in the old days, they had floors full of fact checkers. Those don't exist anymore, so remember those days? And these days, it's at the end of the call, if you need us to just check any quotes, let us, that sort of thing. And I think you have to do it all.
I want to talk a little bit about specifically getting the message out there about women in cannabis. Not only this billion-dollar woman who is, breaking all grounds, but also the science, also the education around cannabis, and not only how women consume. We heard a lot of great stats about, how many women are consuming, how they're consuming, but the science around how it affects women differently than men,
how ages and stages affect it. How are you sort of getting the word out there and targeting specifically for women? Besides starting your own magazine, which is what I had to do.
Well, I want to respond to this question a little bit differently because a lot of the clients that are attracted to GVM Communications are often diverse women. And Ann and I just talked about this in Miami. I have been approached several times to be acquired or to merge with another company. And I told her, I can't. If I get acquired, a Black face, an Afro-Latina face doing PR in this industry is no longer represented in the front lines. And so when we speak about women in this industry, we're often having to educate the journalists that no, this Black-owned woman business owner doesn't have to be featured during the month of February. That her product is relevant 365 days out of the year, and that she's not just a Black woman, she's a woman, she's a leader, right? And so when you think about our Asian sisters, our Latina sisters, like, we're all women collectively, and it shouldn't just be around March for Women's History Month that you want to highlight us, that you should highlight us 365 days out of the year without looking for, let me put a woman in this piece. No, the woman actually should be the first point, should be the first subject matter. And how about multiple women in a piece versus just one represented as a quote in your story? Sorry, I had to state the obvious of the elephant in the room.
Good. But I also want to touch upon the science behind it, because I think that gets lost a lot in conversations about dosing, or the conversations about intake methods, or the conversations that revolve around the way cannabis interacts with a woman's ECS, and depending upon her age, her hormones, her stages, whatever it is. Is there any sort of place for that?
Yes, and we just don't have enough of it. And the other kind of half of the work I do is in the psychedelics industry, and that is all science, and that is all clinical stage, and the cannabis side of the work is more consumer packaged goods. So it's the gummies, it's the rolling papers, it's House of Brands and stuff like that. There is we're missing out. I mean, I think the UK and Israel are eating our lunch when it comes to research, and I think that's a huge just missing component of trying to communicate to people that this isn't this scary drug from the 1960s. And I think the more data we have as PR folks, we love data, and I think there's so little of it in the US that we just need more.
So I believe it all starts with the product. We can be so great at our jobs, and if you've got a garbage product, you may get the first thing, but you're not gonna get the next thing. And then you're just making me look bad too. And so, it starts with a product that's consistent, that you can count on, you know what you're getting, and so those are companies that are professional and they have consistency and you can count on them. And how many times have we told people, like, start low, go slow, just take one. I've told some people that a bazillion times, and they're like, yeah, I took 5 gummies and ended up like staring at the wall the whole night. And so you cannot tell people enough how to use the product. Please don't use too much. And like the different technologies that are happening, like the quick onset with Azuka, which is another woman-owned company. There's a lot of really great stuff going on.
I think that's a good segue to expectations. I think a lot of people got very excited about 8 or 9 years ago when cannabis started. Actually, in the beginning, it was very difficult to get press. It took about 2 years for us to be able to convince anybody to even use the terms marijuana, cannabis, weed. It was a total nightmare. Some of us launched our own green market report to get around that. So whatever the case may be, it did take some time. But the euphoria in cannabis lasted about 2 or 3 years and ended a couple years ago. We see that same euphoria right now in psychedelics. So with this, you may have seen a ton of press, everybody and their mother in Forbes and Business Insider over the last 5 years. That's going to slow down. At this point, unless you have a product or a concept that is truly unique, or you're raising hundreds of millions of dollars, you simply are not newsworthy enough for the mainstream publications. You cannot get angry at your publicists who have been doing this for 30 years, highest paid and the best in the business, because your product didn't make the cover of Forbes when you just came out with another CBD product that 35,000 other people have. So try to be unique in whatever it is that you create when you're handling your messaging and your marketing around your product, yourself, or your company. Think through what stands apart that will give you a better chance to make your news worthy enough to get some sort of publication. But if your news is not, yes, you can grab somebody like Rosie or me or Shawna or Gia or Anna. And some of us do have tricks up our sleeves once, and you pay for that. But if you do not have something that's newsworthy, it ends there. So you have to think that through. Yes, you can come to us and we can pull tricks out of our hats and it will cost you money. But if you want something long-term and consistent, it's your story, it's your team. It's why you came into this business. What talent do you have that's different from someone else? What purpose is your product serving? Did you solve a solution? Whatever the case may be. Just because you exist, just because you have a brand, just because you're pretty, means nothing. You have to give us newsworthy material and understand and manage expectations from there. With that understanding, you will have a wonderful relationship with any PR group you're ever with. If you place expectations that are too high, you will be disappointed and we will not want to work with you.
It's a gradual. I wouldn't change anything she said, because I think people often come out the gate, I think part of your question even about the science piece of it, I'll tell you what, I have encountered something that was very sexist, whereas I was trying to get Dr. Shawna MacGregor, who happens to be a scientist herself, trying to get some of our journalists to hear her, not about her children, not about how she balances life, but about the work, the science of the product. They didn't hear it. And we're like, she's got an incredible story. This is why she's doing the work that she's doing, right? This is why she's getting behind the products that she's getting behind, because she understands the science. But to Cynthia's point, she also didn't expect to come out the gate and land on the cover of Forbes the day she's dropping her product. It's a gradual progress. And that story continues to improve as your product gets better as well.
There's the whole service aspect behind giving, providing the information and the service to educate. And it takes, like you're saying, I want to level set with this group. Like, do you guys actually, there's a difference between earned media and paid media. And like, earned media, you don't just flip a switch and it comes on. Like they're saying, you can buy a 20, I don't even know how much ads cost because I don't do paid media. But I think they're like in the range of $20,000 for like a New York Times ad.
500,000,
Yeah, so like that's like flipping a switch. But with PR, this is relationships. Like, I'm like,
I told you my job is so easy.
Well, I think what Shawna's trying to say is the editorial value versus the qualitative or the quantitative versus qualitative, right? So how much something costs editorially. If we pitch the media and they give us a 2-page story in Business Insider, or I can go drop $50,000 and get us sponsored in Business Insider. The value of the editorial is worth 3 times more than the money you paid for that advertisement. So it's still a much better value to get a PR person all day long. You'll spend a lot of money in advertising, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for what you can get for about $120,000 a year with a PR firm.
But with the outlets that everyone wants to be in, we all know what ones those are. It takes a while. Like, I'll start a conversation with, whatever, name your big outlet, and it could be 6 months or 9 months. They could interview one person and then need to come back. Those big things, they take a while. And you have to have that runway. And the other thing I just want to say is your PR budget cannot kill your company. Like, do not destroy your runway with your PR budget. Like, you've got to know how to budget and do
But
that.
ignoring the PR is also a mistake.
Right.
So I look at it like this, a company is 50% an amazing product, tastes delicious, it's not gonna kill you, it's healthy, it's an awesome product.
It's a great start. You have to have
The other 50%, if the world doesn't know about it, what does it matter? It doesn't even exist, does it? So the other half, PR and marketing. So removing PR completely from your repertoire, if you're stuck in a jam and financially that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. But if you don't allocate enough of your budget to PR and marketing, you will regret it.
Because if a tree falls in the forest and a publicist isn't there to report it, it actually happened.
So tell me, for new brands out there or more established brands, how does one start to look for the right public relations
Good question.
relationship? What is it that's going to...
Relationship's the key word there.
Yeah, I know, that's why I used it, thanks for noticing. So what is it? How does one begin? And is there a difference between a startup and an established? Is there a difference between a brand and a person? What can we start to explain to everybody and help everybody understand? Like, what do I do now? I want this, you've talked me into it, it's great, I've got the budget, what do I do?
So first you want to meet with several different PR firms. The most important,
Like, always meet with at least 3.
no less than 3, but as many as you can. The most important feature, in my opinion, personally, with a PR firm is the chemistry and the relationship. That's first. If you cannot work with these people, or you're getting a weird vibe, or whatever the case may be, it's never gonna work. You need people who get what you're doing, understand your project, and see a little flare in their eyes for it, because they can understand how to make things work as soon as you're talking. So the relationship would be number 1. Number 2, your budget. If you're a small cannabis brand that's maybe bringing in $50,000 a month, you probably don't want to allocate $10,000 of that to PR. So there are groups out there, individuals who will do PR for like $2,500 a month. There are sites out there, which I don't like to promote, but a new one just came online recently. I forgot the name of it, Deborah knows it. But you can actually go onto these sites and buy press. So it's like a pay to play. There are ways to do this without hiring expensive PR people. Most likely, unless you're a very talented communications representative, you may not have the same luck as somebody who's been in PR for a really long time, but there are ways around it. You can start to manually email all of the writers through their emails, through their social media platforms. Twitter's a good one, Instagram's a good one. You can try to reach out to media that way. But for sure, PR is incredibly important. I'm gonna hand this off, let the girls talk.
Just to add 2 things, I think it's really important to have buy-in from the C-suite and for your PR agency to have regular access, because if you don't know what that CEO or what that CFO or what that COO values or understands or wants, you're gonna lose. So we ask all of our clients, we have a process called Firestarter, it's a SWOT analysis, and it's a couple hours long, but we really wanna find out the answers to 3 key questions. One is, who is your audience? So who do you wanna reach? What's the call to action? And then what's a win? So what's a PR win for you? So if we're not on the same page with regards to what a win is, we're gonna lose, and you're gonna be pissed at us, we're gonna be pissed at you, and whatever. But I think having that open line of communication and being okay pushing back to your client and say, you know, a press release may not be the answer to this, so let's think about a byline, let's think about, you know, having a webinar, let's think about, so it's thinking around problems with them, because we're all great writers, but we're not press release factories.
Also, I'd say not every PR firm, and the reason why you want to interview at least 3, you want to make sure they actually specialize in the work that you do. Not every PR firm is the best fit for every company. And, you know, it is an interview process on both sides. So you want to make sure, as Cynthia mentioned, that you see the excitement, right, in their face, but you know, I can get excited and then perhaps products aren't my thing. I might do something else that maybe it's more of the sciences. And so you also want to ask who they've worked with. Who are your clients? What are some of the outlets that you have relationships with? All of the referrals, right? You know, that's so important, because there's so many times people have come to me, and I'm sure many of them, and said, I haven't had a great experience with a PR firm. And so I don't believe in it, right? And so you want to make sure that the PR firm or the publicist, the individual, really does have the expertise or the experience that you're looking for to carry out your brand.
Yes,
Just one last thing, there's a lot of people out there that claim to do PR and they don't.
I mean, the next obvious question is how do you tell the difference? But I've been told that I have to start opening up for questions because I did the worst thing a moderator could do. I did not bring a phone to watch up with me, so I had no idea it was time. So, yeah. Are there any questions? This is an unbelievable opportunity to get really, really close in with PR. We'll go here first.
Hi. So, I don't know if you guys heard me earlier, but I am a registered nurse. And I work in the ICU, so actually, like, being around people and being in public makes me uncomfortable, right? Just in general. So, one thing I was listening to during your discussion is really figuring out who you want to help. And for me, it's like anyone with a pulse, right? And without a pulse. So, trying to figure out who I really want to help has been a challenge for me. If you guys give me any pointers, and this is such a specific question, I'm sorry, but try to generalize it for everybody.
I think it would matter on understanding what your business is, right? So if you're saying I'm a nurse and I started women, cannabis nurses, right? And we're like, oh, okay, that's great, tell us more. Well, we go around and we service patients who are not able to administer their own cannabis. Okay, and so now we begin to work with you in your story, and hopefully we can tell your story, right? The more that you share with us, I think I understood your question, but I wanted to get a better understanding. But if you're a nurse, and I've worked with nurses who are clients of ours, and they said, listen, I started this company and I want to get that message out there to not just other nurses, to invite them to my company to build the platform, but also to service our patients. And we want to get these articles locally, right? So just understanding who and what your business is, and then being able to help you retell that story in a way that media will receive it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask quickly, I'm a journalist myself and TV producer, so I feel like I am frequently in the newsroom trying to pitch these stories of cannabis companies about why it's not just a normal run-of-the-mill thing, like why we should be picking it up, and they most of the time do not. So my question to you guys would be, do you see a difference or a changing landscape with national media versus local media? And if you could give a tip or something you'd like to say to journalists in those rooms, what would it be? And I apologize on behalf of everyone who ever asked about the kids' questions.
I think we all want to answer that question, but I don't want to, I just answered the last one, but I do want to respond to that too.
And I'll be really quick. Mine is make it personal, and that's really what, like, have a person to help you tell that story, and that's what we're always looking for, because a product is is a product. But if there's not a human face and a human compelling story behind it, your producers aren't gonna care.
Right, and how does it tie to your community? And I think that, you know, when you're thinking about like, all stories are local, all, you know, it's, how does it tie back to the community and how does it move and affect the community and in a positive way? And I think that moves the needle with the locals and like the mainstream press.
What state are you from? What media outlet?
Massachusetts. I'm at 7 News in Boston.
So I want to thank you because I've thanked a lot of journalists who were once covering cannabis in the industry, but now segueing more into the mainstream. And I'll be honest, if it weren't for media helping us to get this message out there, many of the general public would not be as open to cannabis today as they were, a few years ago. So it's the work that you're doing and then being able to work with us to help convey that story. And so in the main newsrooms, when they're challenged, some of the issues that I have there is they only want to tell that 420 story or that big story.
Or the criminal story.
Or the criminal story. But I push back and I'd also ask you as the person in the newsroom saying, hey, they're not really feeling this. What else can I say? I love building those relationships, saying, hey, repitch them this way, right? Because maybe they'll receive it, or maybe if it doesn't work right now, can they save it for, this period where we can retell that story? But it's so important, the work that you're doing, because back to Elena's question earlier, you also become that advocate in getting that message out there for us.
And yeah, I mean, not to jump on your bandwagon, but really, truly thank you because, there are producers that we work with who do carry, like they stand up for all of, like they're the ones who, when the assignment, producer, editor is like, I'm gonna do this one about this garbage study or something, that they're like, no, you can't do that. And so having that balance, and I'm not asking anyone to not speak the truth or not show a balanced story. I've been involved in, stories where the reporter maybe said something that I wouldn't have said that way, but I respect them for their reporting.
I think we have time for one more. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mary Cerise, and my company is catered to athletes, and it initially was women and athletes that were using CBD to try to alleviate naturally and stress. But I find that my clientele, even though my blogs, my newsletters, everything that's going out is more geared towards female athletes around age 40 and up, I'm getting a ton of elderly people. So, which is great. They're the ones that are spending the money buying the products. What would you say as a PR person? Do I pivot to advertising more towards the 60 and up, or do I stay with? It's tough because they're the ones that are paying the bills at this point. But I'm just not at that level yet. I teach
They're still some of the most highest consumers in the industry. That 50 and over.
Yeah.
They have money.
Yeah, they still feel 40.
On that.
They still aspire to look 40, so
Well, thank you, everyone. And we have to wrap it up. And thank you, ladies.